The rain was a soft, persistent whisper against the large windows of the Daily Grind, a cafe that smelled perpetually of roasted coffee beans and warm sugar. Outside, the city of Windermere was a watercolor painting of grey and silver, the afternoon light so diluted it seemed to hold its breath. People hurried past under a constellation of umbrellas, but inside, time slowed to the gentle clinking of ceramic on saucer and the low murmur of conversations. At a small table in the corner, a sanctuary she'd chosen for its view of the weeping sky, sat Elara Vance. Her honey-blonde hair was tucked loosely behind her ears, a few errant strands clinging damply to her temples. She wore a heavy, charcoal-grey sweater, the sleeves pulled down far over her hands, a subconscious barrier against a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. In front of her, perfectly centered on the dark wood of the table, sat a small, round cake. Its icing was a pristine white, decorated with exquisitely piped pastel flowers. It looked like a photograph from a magazine, beautiful and untouched. There were no candles piercing its surface, no gathering of friends leaning in with laughter, no family. Elara's fingers, pale and still, rested on the cool metal arms of her wheelchair. The chair was her silent companion, a constant reminder of the life she once knew. It had been 2 years since the fall, a solo climb up the treacherous face of Bear's Peak, a personal challenge she had set for herself. The elation at the summit had been dizzying, a feeling of conquering the world. Then, on the descent, a single moment of lost footing, a skittering of loose rock, and a lifetime was irrevocably changed in the space of a few seconds. The lower half of her body no longer answered her calls. Today was her 27th birthday. This very cafe, this very corner, had been their spot. Her mother would have been sitting opposite her, a mischievous sparkle in her eye, insisting they share a single fork to eat their traditional slice of lemon cake. They would have talked for hours, their laughter a warm bubble in the quiet cafe. But her mother was gone now. A stroke had stolen her away last winter, a thief that moved with a cruel and silent efficiency. And her father, the formidable Julian Vance, was a disembodied voice in a boardroom thousands of miles away in Zurich, negotiating numbers with strangers in tailored suits. He had sent a text that morning, HBD, a gift is on its way. Elara exhaled, a slow, shaky breath, and lowered her gaze to the perfect, lonely cake. She didn't expect anything from today. She didn't even want attention. It felt like sandpaper on a raw wound. But as she sat wrapped in her silence, a small, clear voice pierced the quiet cocoon she had built around herself. "Is it your birthday? Can we sing to you?" Elara blinked, her focus shifting from the cake to the small figure standing beside her table. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, stared at her, her bright, inquisitive eyes wide beneath the brim of a sunny yellow rain hat. In her tiny hands, she clutched a paper drawing of a cat wearing a party hat, its rainbow colors slightly smudged from the rain. Behind her, a man froze, clearly mortified. He stepped forward quickly, a hand landing gently on the girl's shoulder. "Lily," he said, his voice a low, apologetic rumble. "We shouldn't bother people, sweetheart." The little girl, Lily, looked up at him, her brow furrowed with the unassailable logic of childhood. "But she's all alone, Daddy. Birthdays are not supposed to be alone." Elara's gaze drifted from the girl to the man. He looked to be in his mid-30s, his face worn but handsome, with kind, tired eyes, and a soft stubble that couldn't mask the decency etched into the lines of his face. He met Elara's gaze with an apologetic smile, already turning to guide his daughter away. But before he could, Elara found her voice, thin and fragile from disuse. "Please," she said, her lips managing a faint, tremulous smile. "Please do." Surprise flickered across the man's face, quickly replaced by a warm, disarming smile of his own. Lily beamed and wasted no time scrambling onto the chair beside Elara. The man hesitated for a heartbeat, then offered Elara a questioning glance as if to confirm. She gave a single firm nod. He took the seat opposite her, his presence calm and solid. "You forgot the candles," Lily announced, her eyes wide as she examined the cake. Elara's smile felt a little more real this time. "I guess I did." "That's okay," the girl said cheerfully. "We can still sing." And sing they did. It was a clumsy, heartfelt rendition. Lily led the way with a child's pure, off-key enthusiasm, while her father, Liam, joined in with a quiet, steady baritone that wrapped the simple song in warmth. Elara watched them, her heart beginning to thud not from nerves, but from something far deeper, an ache that had been dormant for too long. As they finished the last line, "Happy birthday to you," Elara lowered her head, pressing her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders began to shake. She made no sound, but the tears came anyway. Unexpected, hot, and real. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of the strange, piercing kindness of it all. The presence, the warmth, the simple human connection she hadn't realized she was starving for. Lily tilted her head. "Are you okay?" Elara nodded quickly, wiping furiously at her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, thank you. That was the best part of my day." Lily puffed out her chest, looking immensely proud. Her father gave a small, understanding nod, his eyes saying everything his mouth did not. They sat for a few moments in a comfortable silence, three strangers at a birthday table. But in that silence, something had shifted, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Elara Vance did not feel quite so alone. A week later, the sky over Windermere hung low with a blanket of silver clouds. The scent of paint, wet wood, and a faint hint of lavender soap filled the small studio tucked between a florist and a bookstore. Inside, the quiet murmur of brushes on canvas and the soft cadence of careful breathing gave the space a meditative calm. Elara sat before her easel, the canvas untouched. Her right hand, once so dominant and sure, rested limply on her lap. Her left hand, awkward and foreign, held a brush. This was the third week of a 6-week art therapy class, a place for stroke survivors, trauma patients, and anyone else trying to reclaim some part of themselves through creation. For Elara, it was less about painting and more about a brutal lesson in patience. She dipped the brush into a blob of pale blue paint and dragged it across the blank canvas. The stroke was shaky, uneven, a failure. Her therapist often said, "Beauty is in the effort." Elara wanted to believe that, but today, all she saw was the floor. The bell above the front door jingled, its cheerful sound an intrusion. A familiar, high-pitched voice shattered the studio's calm. "Daddy, that's her!" Elara looked up, startled. There, framed in the doorway of the classroom, stood Liam and Lily. The little girl waved excitedly, pointing directly at Elara. Behind her, Liam offered a sheepish small wave, a look of surprise on his face. Elara's chest tightened, not with fear or embarrassment, but with something closer to shock and, oddly, relief. She watched as Liam leaned in to speak with the receptionist, while Lily skipped toward the adjacent kids' art class, clutching a box of crayons like treasure. Elara quickly returned her gaze to her canvas, pretending to be absorbed in her work, though her hand now trembled for an entirely different reason. Minutes passed, filled with the scratching of her brush. Then a quiet presence appeared at her side. "I didn't know you were in this class," Liam said gently, his voice low. She looked up, the brush still poised in her hand. "I didn't expect to see you either," she replied, offering a tentative smile. He nodded toward her canvas. "That looks better than anything I could do." She let out a small, breathy laugh. "It's an abstract mess, but thank you." A brief silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. It was gentle, respectful. He didn't ask what had happened to her. He didn't tilt his head in pity or mention wheelchairs or healing. He simply treated her like a person, and the normalcy of it felt like a cool drink of water on a scorching day. "I drop Lily here every week," he added. "She says it's the best hour of her life." Elara smiled, the warmth lingering. "She's something." "She is," he agreed. "I have no idea how she turned out so bright." Elara lowered her eyes, maybe because she sees the world without fear. Noah nodded thoughtfully. Or maybe she was just lucky to land in a family where love came before judgment. Before she could respond, Lily's voice echoed from the next room. "Daddy, we're painting cats today." Noah grinned and turned toward the sound. "Duty calls," he said. Amelia watched him walk away and felt the strangest thing settle in her chest. A lightness, no grand moment, no confession, just presence. Later that week, the rain returned to Windermere, heavier this time. The storm rolled in mid-afternoon, catching the town by surprise. Elara had come to the studio alone, determined not to miss her session. When class ended, she wheeled herself to the door and stared out at the torrent of water falling from the sky. Her sweater was thin. The sidewalk back to her apartment was uneven, slick with puddles. She hesitated, a familiar wave of despair washing over her. Then, without a word, an umbrella opened beside her. It was Liam. He said nothing, no announcement, no commentary. He just held the umbrella over both of them, his other hand finding the handles of her chair. He began to push slowly, carefully, matching his steps to a rhythm that felt safe and steady. They didn't speak the whole way home. Elara didn't offer directions. He seemed to know the way. When they arrived at her building, he parked her under the awning, closed the umbrella, and shook the water from it. "You're good?" he asked softly. She nodded, her throat too tight to form words. Then he was gone, disappearing back into the rain. That evening, as Elara sat by her window with a cup of tea, she noticed something new on the small side table near her painting supplies. A tiny box. She opened it slowly. Inside was a petite lemon tart, just like the one from the cafe. On top, a tiny note was written in neat, careful handwriting, "Still rooting for you. L." Something inside her that had been frozen solid for 2 years finally cracked, not with pain, but with release. For the first time, she felt seen, not as the paralyzed daughter of a CEO, not as a victim of fate, but as Elara. Just Elara. She took a bite of the tart. It was sweet and real. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a gentle rhythm. They'd cross paths at the cafe, share quiet laughs in the bookstore, and always part with a warmth that lingered long after. One crisp afternoon, Elara was at the cafe again, trying to sketch. She was mixing teal and gold on a small palette when Liam appeared with 2 cups. He set one in front of her. "I figured tea might not be enough today," he said. "Thank you." She smiled, touched by the gesture. He sat down beside her. "How's the painting?" She shrugged. "It's hard to feel in control anymore. My life used to make sense." Noah nodded slowly. "Mine didn't either for a while. I was a chef in a high-end kitchen before Ava's mom got sick. Cancer. I left it all behind. After she died, I had to raise Ava on my own. She was only 2. Elara set her brush down. "That's a lot." He nodded again. "It taught me to slow down. I was always trying to be everything at once. Ava just needed me to be there." Taking a deep breath, Elara finally shared her own story. "I climbed Bear's Peak alone 2 years ago. It was supposed to be a celebration. I slipped. Everything changed." She paused, the words feeling heavy in her mouth. "No one was with me. It was my choice to go alone. I thought I could handle it. Then the fall, the surgery, the paralysis, and when I finally came home, my mother was gone." Noah stayed silent, his presence a steady anchor. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice soft. "You don't sound like you pity me." "I don't," he replied. "I admire you." They sat in a silence that didn't need to be filled. "I've met so many people who look at me and only see the chair or the money," she said, her tone more curious than bitter. "You don't." "I see Elara," Liam said. "Just Elara." Something inside her relaxed. Later that week, she painted a soft outline of a mountain, kissed by gold like sunlight breaking over something broken. When she exited the building, Liam was waiting, umbrella in hand. "Figured you'd want a dry ride." That night, she studied her painting. The lines were crooked, but it felt like a beginning. In those small acts, something fragile had started to grow. Not a rescue, not a cure, but a hand held out in the rain. And for now, that was enough. A few days later, her phone buzzed continuously. She braced herself and opened the news notification. Iris crippled after risky solo climb, hidden away in suburban coffee shop. Below, a grainy photo of her in the wheelchair. The caption was cruel. Her father, the tech billionaire, refuses to let her face the world again. The world went silent. Betrayal cut deeper than the accident ever had. For 2 days, she disappeared. No art class, no cafe, the curtains drawn. On the third night, a soft, hesitant knock. She curled deeper into her blanket fort. The knock came again. It was Liam, holding an umbrella and a cup of tea. He stepped inside quietly, placing the tea on the coffee table. He didn't speak. He sank into the armchair beside her and just sat. The silence was gentle, not accusatory. Outside, the rain finally ceased. Hours passed. She jolted awake at 4 a.m. to find him still in the chair, sleeping quietly. A tear fell. "You stayed?" she whispered. He stirred, blinking slowly. "That's what you do for someone you care about," he said, his voice husky. She reached out and placed her hand on his, anchoring herself. The next day, she found a note he'd left. On the back of the card from the lemon tart, he had scribbled, "I won't let the world steal you." That day, Elara Blake reopened her phone. She wheeled herself back into the art studio, not because the world forgave her, but because she had someone who saw her, who stayed for her without asking anything, and that made all the difference. Under the cafe's warm glow, her brush strokes became bolder. One afternoon, Liam entered with a framed message. "Beauty isn't symmetry, it's sincerity." Later, she and Lily made candy hearts, their laughter filling the small space. Her father, James Blake, arrived unannounced. He found them there. "Is that the child they say you spend time with?" he asked, his voice cold. "You should not associate yourself with people of lesser standing." Elara's stomach twisted. She took a deep breath. "His name is Liam. He's more real than any boardroom executive you ever placed in front of me. He doesn't judge me for falling. He simply stays." James's jaw tightened. He turned and walked away without another word. As she watched him go, she glanced at Lily, beaming with candy heart smiles, and knew she had made the right choice. Her art became honest. She painted golden haloed candlesticks beside a cracked chair. She painted a small figure kneeling to draw hearts on sugar candy. One afternoon, sunlight filtered through the cafe windows as Lily presented her with a handmade gingerbread cookie. "For your courage," she said, hugging Elara tight. Elara looked across at Liam and whispered, "I think I can do this." He smiled softly, passing her a warm mug. She began teaching a weekly painting class for children with disabilities. Noah helped her set up. As they painted side by side with the kids, somewhere between a brushed laugh and a shared glance, their hands touched. A spark. That evening, as snow flurries danced in the headlights of his car, she whispered, "It still hurts, but it does not define me anymore." Noah's eyes held hers. He placed a hand over hers, warm and steady, and then they kissed, not fierce but soft, a feather brushing the surface of long, dormant hope. It was the moment she realized she was not broken. She was simply choosing someone brave enough to sit with her pain. She painted a mountain range, the sun rising behind peaks tinted in rose gold. At the edge, 2 figures side by side holding brushes. She signed it, "Beauty is in the bond you choose." She hung it in the cafe, right under the frame he had given her. A week later, the cafe was strung with pastel bunting and yellow fairy lights. A cake sat in the center, "To Ava and the bravest woman I know." It was a party, their party. In walked James Blake, holding a small velvet box. I owe you a real apology," he said, his voice cracking. I was scared. I didn't know how to help, so I hid. I see it now. This is what love looks like. The day of Ava's school play, after the children had taken their bows, Ava stepped forward to the mic. "Can my family come up here, please?" Noah and Elara went on stage, confused. Ava held out a small velvet box. "Mommy Ella," she said, her eyes glowing, "will you marry Daddy Noah?" The entire auditorium gasped, then erupted. Noah, stunned and sheepish, took the box, knelt down, and opened it toward Elara. The ring was simple, a quiet promise. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Yes, not because you completed me, but because you reminded me I was whole all along." That night, they sat on the back steps of the school, Ava curled sleepily in Noah's lap. "For a long time I thought I was a half-finished story," Elara said softly. Noah kissed her temple. "Then let's write it slow, every word, every page." The stage lights inside had gone dark, but in their hearts a spotlight lingered, warm, quiet, and infinite. Love had not saved her, but it had reminded her that she was worth saving. What an incredible journey of healing and hope. We hope this story brought a little warmth to your day. If it did, please take a moment to hit the like button, as it helps our channel grow. And to ensure you never miss another emotional story, make sure you subscribe to Stories for You. We can't wait to share the next one with you.